My name is Angel Sosa. I'm a retired lieutenant from New York City Police Department.
Which department?
New York City Police Department.
And the lieutenant where?
And I was a lieutenant. My last command was the 25th Precinct, and I was the Special Operations Lieutenant.
Okay.
I've known Joe for over 35 years. I met him in around 1975, and I've always known him to be an honorable person. He was very active, so was I, and I saw how he worked because we used to see each other in court all the time.
So you knew he was an honest cop?
Oh yes, I used to see how he operated and what he did, and he was always an honest cop.
You were also a sergeant in Internal Affairs, correct?
Yes, I was a sergeant in Internal Affairs from 1984 to 1991, and I never had an opportunity or an occasion to investigate anything of Joe's because I worked in the Bronx. But the lieutenant that I worked with, which you know, John Burward,
yes,
he investigated Joe on a number of occasions. And from speaking with him, I knew that Joe was just being set up.
Yeah.
And he was being set up by drug dealers and maybe who knows who other.
Right.
One thing that I used to, when I was in Internal Affairs, was that the drug dealers knew that in order to get an active cop off the street or away from them was to make complaints. So what they would do is every time there was an arrest made, they would make a complaint that money was missing, that they were beat up, things like that.
So you are confident Joe is innocent. How did you meet Joe? How many interactions did you have with Joe over the years?
Well, I met Joe in about 1975, and it's funny how I met him. I was working in the 2-5, so was Joe, and my brother-in-law was a motorman from New York City Transit. He stopped at 125th Street, went up to get a sandwich from the restaurant at the corner there, and while he was up there, he got robbed by a guy with a gun and a guy with a knife.
Oh my God.
Right. The next day, my brother-in-law comes back, dresses down like bummy, and he walks around, and lo and behold, he sees the same two guys sitting on a stoop. So he continues to walk, and he sees Joe. He sees Joe on patrol, and he goes up to him and says, "Hey, you know, I was robbed yesterday. A guy has a gun, and the other guy had a knife, and they're right over there down the street. You got to get back up because they have a gun and all that." So Joe said, "Okay, just follow up, go in front of me. When you see him, just nod, make sure they're still there, and I'll take care of it."
Amazing. Amazing.
So Joe goes, and they're still sitting there, so he gives them the signal. Joe goes, and he grabs these two guys, arrests them, and lo and behold, find a gun, a knife, and my brother-in-law's property.
That's amazing. So they got the property, and Joe took on two very dangerous criminals that were armed.
Right. So my brother-in-law came to me and said, "Hey, do you know this guy named Joe Sanchez? He works in your precinct." I said, "Oh, no, I don't think so." So, well, and he explained to me what happened. He said, "Well, this guy, man, he's a tough guy. He's he got big ones, because this guy had a gun and the other guy had a knife." So I went and I met Joe. I saw Joe, and I said, "Hey, how you doing? I heard that you took care of my brother-in-law. He was robbed, and you got the perps, and that's where I met Joe."
That's incredible.
And that was over 35 years ago.
Over 35 years ago, and now what do you say? It's over 30 years. We got to get him reinstated. Do you believe he should be reinstated?
Yes, he should be. He should have been reinstated immediately after he was exonerated from that situation.
Right. It never should have gone that far.
It should have never went that far.
Bless you.
When I worked in Internal Affairs, it was a saying that used to go around, and this saying was, "With this smoke, there's fire." However, it's very easy for people to reduce smoke without fire, throw a smoke bomb.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's what happened with Joe.
That's great.
So instead of them looking at that and saying, "Oh, Joe didn't do anything, he should go back on the job," they didn't do that. They said, "Well, there's smoke, there's fire." So
They set him up.
the commissioner decided not to rehire him.
Yeah. I mean, this guy was an honest cop. he and Herman were so brave that night. The guy had a gun. There were at least 6 of them. They should have been given medals, not
Definitely,
it's
definitely.
not Joe booted
And
out.
if you notice, out of all that situation, the only guy that really got arrested and all that was Joe. Why? Because
Unbelievable.
the drug dealers wanted Joe away from them, out of their hair, because he was the kind of cop, if he saw something, he would take action.
Yeah, it might have
And-
made other cops that weren't as active feel a little bit bad, but the drug dealers won and Joe lost.
Well, they won because, when Joe was around, when he was working, these guys couldn't function. They couldn't move, the drug dealers.
Right.
And also at one time, and actually this is before Giuliani, was that they would say they had sergeants, if the cops made an arrest, the sergeant had to do a report why an arrest was made for narcotics instead of reporting it to the narcotics division.
So what did that mean to us?
Well, they're basically saying, don't bother with the arrest unless it's something that falls in front of your face.
So and why would they do that perhaps? Any ideas?
I would think it's because there was a lot of people that were complaining, saying, hey, I'm starved, they stopped my son, and yet the son is not saying, hey, I was doing drugs,
Right.
selling drugs.
So when Giuliani came in, what happened?
When Giuliani came in, it was a whole different ballgame.
How so?
Whole different. He gave the power back to the police.
He gave power back to you?
Back to the police.
To the police.
He said, if you're a cop, if you see a transaction going on, a crime going on, take action.
Do
I
something.
expect you to take action.
Good.
And that permeated down through the ranks to the guy in the street.
Unbelievable.
And most cops that were active, like Joe and myself, we did that.
Yeah, and you were doing that automatically.
Yes. And then I got promoted to sergeant. I went to internal affairs. I had an opportunity to investigate complaints. And then I really saw where most of these complaints were coming from. And they were coming from drug dealers.
Right.
And
We're
they
trying
would-
to shut down the people
And they would
arresting
tell
them.
their people that got arrested to say that this particular cop, if he was active, stole money, stole drugs, stole whatever. So what would happen is they would get the heat, and then the cop would say, hey, I'm not gonna bother with that because I'm getting called to internal affairs, I'm getting in trouble, I'm losing days for this or for that. So they didn't take the action that they should have.
Right.
But I had a case in the Bronx. I can't give any names or anything, but the police officer, basically like Joe, he was very active. He made a lot of arrests. And then I got an opportunity to follow this guy home, to work, off duty. When he was off duty, I was on this guy's case for 6 months or more. And the outcome of that was that this guy was an honest cop. He was a good, active cop. And that he was just being set up. I re-interviewed the complainant, and I said, I've been following this guy and doing all, and everything you're telling me just doesn't jive up. The guy admitted to me that his boss, the main drug dealer, told him to say that it really didn't happen though.
Wow.
So, but then he told me, he says, look, if you make me go to court or something, they're gonna kill me and my family, so I cannot say this. I'm telling you, but I can't go to court and say what I just told you.
Tragic.
So what I did my report, I spoke to my boss, I spoke to the chief, and they said, okay, close out the case. Oh, and then I found out, the same person, he says, listen, if they don't, if you guys don't put him out of here, they're gonna put a hit on him because they've been talking about it. I said, oh, okay. So, close the report, I made it unsubstantiated because I couldn't say unfounded because then they would say, well, it's unfounded, you gotta complain it. But the complaint wasn't gonna say, well, they knew because I had told everybody.
Right.
But on paper, we couldn't put it that way.
We couldn't put, yeah, you
Because
couldn't
then
put
that
on
means this
paper.
guy would have to go to court,
Right.
prosecute.
And then he would be shot.
So what I
probably.
did, I recommended that this officer be because he lived in Long Island, transferred from the Bronx to Queens, closer to his
to be
home.
close to his home. Bless you.
So-
Good soul.
Yeah.
So Joe is innocent. We're gonna go to Mayor de Blasio and Police Commissioner Bratton and ask for an honorary reinstatement. What would you say to them?
I for that 100%. You know, knowing Joe all these years, knowing Joe how he was, everyone he deals with, he's a great man. A great man.
Thank you and bless you. Thank you.
Love him.